It's research season again, which means lots of students have one question on their mind. Why not Wikipedia? You've probably been told by high school teachers or professors that you cannot use Wikipedia. And that's generally true, though there may be some exceptions to that. So in this video, I want to talk about some of Wikipedia's strengths, but then also some of the drawbacks, some of its shortcomings. So we have to acknowledge that Wikipedia is one of the most extensive and helpful sources of information we have. As of the filming of this video, the English language Wikipedia contains more than 6 million articles on an enormous variety of subjects. So to not use Wikipedia, to just say Wikipedia has no part in the research process, is really, it's a lie, and it's a little unreasonable. We can't just say no Wikipedia ever. Wikipedia is actually a good source for general information. It gives you a little bit of depth and some generally pretty accurate information on a range of subjects. I say pretty accurate because in general, Wikipedia is a bit less accurate than some of the legacy encyclopedias. So one study, granted more than a decade old, but an early study on this found about an 80 to 85% accuracy rate, which compares to about 90 to 95% for traditional encyclopedias. So the thing we want to keep in mind, 80 to 85% isn't terrible, but it's not the kind of number you want to stake the success of a research paper or project on. It's a little low. What complicates this is the issues, the inaccuracies tend to be scattered throughout an article. So the problem isn't wholesale inaccuracy. I think you'll find most Wikipedia articles you read get most things right. The issue is the editing system, which really allows people to go in and make some changes with only the approval of volunteer section editors, right? So that tends to mean Wikipedia is as good as its contributors and editors. In some areas, that means Wikipedia is going to be an outstanding source. In other areas, Wikipedia can be an absolute mess. And that's what really makes it problematic. If you know that you've got 95% accuracy across the board and you can trust almost everything in almost every article, you'd be okay. The problem is Wikipedia can be really hit or miss. So to give you one example, it recently came out just the day before I'm filming this video that the majority of the Scots language Wikipedia is not actually in Scots. So because the Scots language Wikipedia relies on a single editor, a single administrator, that administrator was able to sort of use their power to control some of the content, and they produced a huge number of articles, apparently tens of thousands of articles. And yeah, as it turns out, that person was not actually a speaker of the Scots language. They were an American who claimed to speak Scots and were very often just creating these poor simulacrums of Scots. Basically, it was English written phonetically to sound like Scottish English, which is a problem because Scots is actually its own language. So I'm using this example not to say that this is the norm for Wikipedia, but to give you a sense of why a lot of faculty members, librarians, and researchers would really be hesitant to use Wikipedia for very much. That's because the risks can be quite high. So what I would suggest to you is that you think about Wikipedia as a good place to start your preliminary research. When you're generating a research question, thinking about a topic, figuring out how you want to approach something, Wikipedia is a great place to get a lot of information on a topic. Wikipedia also, when it has good reference lists, and that varies from article to article, can be a good place to go to start your research. So you can find some good sources on Wikipedia in that reference list that you can then read, process, evaluate, and potentially make use of. The articles themselves, though, can be problematic. And because of the variation in them, I would not suggest that you rely on Wikipedia primarily for information in any research paper, project, or presentation, when you can find more reliable sources and ideally scholarly sources, which we're talking about in class, instead. In other words, to borrow the words of one researcher, you want to think about Wikipedia as a discovery tool. It's going to help you find new ideas, find new information. In that sense, it's really helpful in the early stages of the research process. But you don't want to use Wikipedia as a major source of evidence, of information, of data, of analysis. For those things, you really need better sources with more reliable contributors and editors. I hope this video has been helpful and kind of demystified or broken down why some of your faculty members, librarians, and others, past teachers, may have told you Wikipedia is an absolute no for research papers. So I hope this has helped show you that Wikipedia isn't a no for research. It's just not something that you want to include in a finished research project. Thanks for listening.